E te Papa o te Hahi Katolika, Papa Francesco Norera haere, 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 I runga te rangi Māori o te ariki. He ngā mea mō te komiti. Tēnā koutou, ka nui tamihi atu e ngā rangatira mati atu o koutou, e manaaki. I'm speaking on behalf of Archbishop Don Tamihere and Archbishop Justin Duckworth, who's on Zoom. As described in their written submission, the Anglican Church in Aotearoa, New Zealand and Polynesia, Te Hahi Mehe Nari ki Aotearoa, ki Nuti Reni ki ngā Mautere o te Moananui a Kiwa, is the oldest institution established in Aotearoa since the arrival of people from Europe. Founded in 1814, coinciding with the first Pākehā permanent settlement, our establishment predates that of Parliament, and recognition of the principles of Māori Pākehā partnership has been continuous throughout our history. Our church became deeply interwoven with the creation of Te Tiriti, serving as an instrument of engagement between the British Empire and ngā rangatira me ngā hāpu of these islands. The Anglican Church Clapham 6 theological emphasis on liberation, initially for enslaved peoples globally and subsequently for indigenous populations, informed the best of our faith at that time. In other words, each person is made in the image of God and is to be accorded that humanity and dignity, not to be subjugated. William Wilberforce, the leading and Anglican British MP, who finally facilitated the banishment of slavery from the British Empire, was one of the role models and thought leaders behind Anglican Sir James Stevens, a permanent Undersecretary of the Colonial Office, who was instrumental in incorporating the concept of true chiefly rule, tino rangatiratanga, into the English drafted treaty preparation documents. To describe Stevens' influence and his Anglican background, I quote and précis from the relatively new book, The English Text of the Treaty of Waitangi by Ned Fletcher. The survey undertaken here suggests that the implications of the English text were understood in the same sense as the division between Kāwanatanga and Rangatiratanga in the Māori text. On this basis, Ned argues, it is quite conceivable that Busby and the New Zealand Gazette were not alone in understanding the effect of the treaty as akin to the federal arrangement prefigured by the Declaration of Independence, Te Whakaputunga. Accordingly, Rangatiratanga refers to independence in internal affairs, leaving Kāwanatanga, or sovereignty, defined and limited by reference to its objects, as applying to foreign relations, justice, peace, good order, and trade. Justice, peace, and good order were also to be understood in the context of continuing tribal self-management. Intertribal disputes were to be mediated by the Kāwanatanga, and warfare was contrary to the creation of Kāwanatanga and Māori respect for the government of the Queen. Te Kāwanatanga obtained full authority over Europeans, and British justice was to regulate interracial conflict, both criminal and civil, although Russell envisaged that legislation would permit Māori custom to be taken into account. At least in British settlements, or where a tribe relinquished authority over a malefactor, serious crimes not involving Europeans could also be prosecuted under colonial law, and so we see the emergence of a simple form of mutual interdependence being implied. In 1840, there was a body of opinion that this kind of sovereignty could be limited by the terms of this kind of treaty. Seen in this light, the Māori and English texts of the treaty reconcile, Ned argues. The view taken here is that sovereignty in the English text is to be understood according to the principal purpose of establishing government over British subjects for the protection of ngā iwi Māori. The effect of the treaty in English was to set up an arrangement similar to a federation in which sovereign power did not supplant tribal government. Agreed national structural provisions for both partners are described, overarched by one agreement about the common good. Although the treaty was not without precedent, the treaty marked a relatively new method of attempting to protect an indigenous people from the inrush of a new and essentially different culture. It was conceived, written and affirmed in good faith. Parallel to our own church's current treaty-based internal arrangements, which are so creative and life-giving for us, one of the best practiced treaty in action models today, which expresses this original and mutually beneficial intention both ways, is the shared management of the Waikato River Authority. Te Awa Waikato, the Waikato River as an ecosystem, and Te Waiora, Te Iatuku o Te Iwi, the artery of the people, is well overseen by a treaty-based combination of iwi and crown appointments. The many hundreds of years of experience of Waikato Tainui of living beside the river as a source of life and vitality is partnered with other forms of expertise and representation by the Crown. This is a win-win that greatly enhances the care of the river. Everybody benefits. What's good in treaty terms was and is good for everybody. For us, as in 1814, the Anglican Church from our earliest days at Rangihaua to the dissemination of the faith through Kaifakāko, Māori evangelists, our bridge practice was rooted in the concept of Māori and Pākehā sharing a common faith while maintaining their distinct spheres of influence. By the 1850s and with the establishment of the church, this practice was further solidified, with hapu and rangatira leading, building and resourcing their own faith communities as Pākehā did theirs. When they partnered, they were called to enhance each other's mana. This exemplified Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the principle of partnership, a practice maintained continuously to the present day. Māori parishes and pastorates have consistently demonstrated Māori self-determination while always acknowledging their place within the united church. Over 30 years ago, our revised constitution, Te Pouhere, formally acknowledged Te Tiriti o Waitangi as central to our identity in Aotearoa, New Zealand. This also involved the formal adoptions of the principles of partnership and bicultural development. One house with several large rooms where mana and identity are respected and enhanced, but there are no locked doors. Te Rongopai Aruka, the Māori language Gospel of Luke, was first printed in December 1835 by a Mihenare Anglican mission. The publication included the words, before the treaty, Rangatiratanga and Kawana, which subsequently became seminal terms in the Anglican translation of the Treaty of Waitangi in February 1840, as translated by Anglican Henry and Edward Williams, after consultation with Ngā Rangatira Māori at Waitangi. Within the Gospel of Luke, Rangatiratanga refers to the kingdom of God, paralleling the English treaty wording which, quote, guarantees to the chiefs and tribes of New Zealand and to the respective families and individuals thereof the full, exclusive and undisturbed possession of their lands and estates, forests and fisheries, and other properties which they may collectively or individually possess. This represents a specific form of self-determination, reinforcing the concept of kingitanga present in the 1835 Declaration of Independence, upon which the treaty's moral authority rests. He Whakaputunga was also translated by the Reverend Henry Williams, with the same Lucan words in mind. Kawanatanga represents a form of limited governorship, interacting with another partner, and in Luke's Gospel is between Governor Pilate and King Herod. Māori Gospel readers would have immediately recognised the power and texture of these words, Rangatiratanga and Kawana, from the first document ever written in Māori prior to 1840. Anglican missions often hosted treaty signings and emphasised the moral high ground being sought. This was expressed as covenant in the biblical sense by Māori mission participants, as Claudia Orens has so clearly shown, especially Honeheke at Waitangi, as well as mission-based Pākehā. Without this sense of a covenantal good faith, literally implied in the wording of the treaty and thoroughly discussed by everybody on February 4 and 5, it would have never been signed. We need to respect the spirit as well as the letter of the law in upholding the principles of the treaty. The Māori wording of Te Tiriti, parallel to the English version, clearly describes a balance between Kawanatanga and Rangatiratanga, embodying shared partnership, active participation, equity, options, and tribal self-determination. It is impossible to imagine Rangatira at Waitangi giving away the basic realities of their way of life. These are the very principles threatened by the new bill. Remove or dilute them, and a promise is broken at the very heart of our nation's well-being. In conclusion, the Treaty Principles Bill, in the view of the Archbishops, effectively blurs this vision, clearly denying the very moral foundations that undermine and underpin our unique form of democracy. The health and well-being of our country is at stake. Toi tu te diriti te kawanatata.
Thank you, Sir David. That's all the time we have for you this morning. So just want to
That was a really interesting submission. I really liked the part where I think he's a bishop, right? I think I got
Yes.
that right. I'm not an Anglican, folks. My parents are. But either way, I found it really interesting how he brought up the historical context between the two words, kawanatanga and rangatiratanga, because the Bible was being translated before the treaty came into effect. And yes, they would have used words like kawanatanga and rangatiratanga to denote different political relations that occurred within the Bible. And I've got to read their submission now because I do know that there were Anglicans and Presbyterians and stuff down in Aotearoa, down that way. And, they would have had these conversations prior to signing the treaty. What's the legal context of this? And that was probably how they understood it. That's probably, the relations between and the differences between rangatiratanga and kawanatanga. So it's like, oh, okay, that is really interesting to note, and I am going to read their submission.
Yeah.
I swear to God, I haven't copied their submission, even though I said some of the words that he said earlier on.
Yeah.
But, he provides a lot more context.
Yeah. And like I haven't been a church-going person for a very long time. But I really like that he reiterates how they use Te Tiriti within their church and within their foundations for how they operate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Anglicans are pretty dope. I mean, I'm not an Anglican myself, but from all the interactions I've had with local Anglicans, they're pretty dope.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, how did we get there? Okay,
I don't know what button I pressed, but I must have pressed the button. Okay, I think Sam did some magical stuff behind the scenes.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. We live here now. Sweet. If even such deeply traditional churches can take Te Tiriti and affect it into how they operate, why can't the ACT Party?
I mean, maybe it comes from the standpoint, with them having more or less centrist or centrist-leaning right-wing libertarian values. Unlike the other libertarians, the more Christian conservative type libertarians that you find in America, I think ACT is pretty committed to the idea of separation of church and state, which is an idea I also support, being a left-wing libertarian. But yeah, but that doesn't mean that we should ignore the historical context of things, and ignore the way how the church did interact with Indigenous people in the past and the language that was used, because whether we like it or not, missionaries were sent out, right? They translated the Bible. And it's important that when we look at something like Te Tiriti, and we're trying to understand how our ancestors would have viewed the document, we have to go back further than Te Tiriti itself and look at other documents like the Bible, like the Māori translation of the Bible. How did they understand that? And I think that's what's really missing from this conversation here is, how did our tupuna understand Te Tiriti, and did they understand what they were signing? And I know in my own submission, I said, yes, he understood exactly what he was signing. He understood that as a rangatira, he had control over his assets. And I've got historical documents to back that up. But yeah, I mean, I just did a deep dive into my own ancestor. I don't know about other submitters, but that is something that I would like to see done. Kind of like a anthropologic investigation to how our ancestors saw it. I would love to see that.
Yeah.
Alrighty, next submission.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.